The CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, is brought to you by Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program on Mediacom Channel 15 in Des Moines, Iowa and the surrounding area. Our program comes on at 1 o'clock p.m. on Sunday. Again, it's repeated in the same week on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. We also have the tape playing in Omaha, Council Bluffs area on Cox Channel 23. Every other Thursday, you can watch it out there. This program, the time is 4:30 p.m. every other Thursday in Council Bluffs, Omaha. You can email us at vocal.iowa@mchsi.com. My telephone number is 515-276-3956. John's number here in Des Moines is 515-282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and at the controls with me today is my co-host,
John Harvey, and maybe we better get a mic on here, John Harvey, and we're going to switch immediately to Terrance Walker. Terrance Walker has a guest on our Newsmaker line. Here now, Terrance Walker.
Thanks for having me on once again, Donna, John. I am Terrance Walker again, the self-proclaimed judge of the judges here in the state of Iowa.
Louder.
One of the few places where you're going to actually see any real discussion pertaining to the judiciary. I have a guest on the phone with us today. His name is Martin Lapidus. He's actually from the Maryland area. He's involved with the Foundation for Cancer-Free America, which is not only tackling cancer, but it's also tackling the cancer that's affecting us all in the judiciary. Are you with us, Martin?
I am with you.
Okay. Now, we had you on the show a couple weeks ago. We discussed a book that the foundation had wrote. Could you just touch upon that briefly, what the book was about?
Yes, the book is called The Rape of 2,500 Creditors by the United States Judicial System. It describes why the foundation believes certain things happen in the judiciary, and it takes one example, and it gives a blow-by-blow description of what happened and how many others were affected. It ended up affecting about 2,500 people to the amount of $412 million. It denied a leading hospital in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins, from receiving $75 million for cancer research. It put companies out of business in Illinois. It even adversely affected the former king of Iraq, King Faisal. It reached out all over the country and all over the world with the damage it was done.
Wow. Now, now this book was just released this year, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's available where?
It's available in any bookstore. It can be ordered by Heavy Bookstore, and it's published through iUniverse. It's a computer system that will pump out any amount of books that someone orders.
Okay.
So they're available in every bookstore in the country.
Okay, super, super. Now you were, I were in discussion here a couple weeks ago, and I think that you had told me that you were going to meet with a member of a senator's staff. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, we met with a staff member of Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who describes federal judges as high priests, and he's on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and his subcommittee handles immigration and citizenship, but he's trying to arrange for us to get to the legal reform subcommittee. We've had one meeting and should be having another meeting next week.
Okay, and how did the first meeting go?
I think it went very well. We were given an hour and a half. We described as briefly as we could what happened. We gave them the expose to read, and we look very favorable to John Cornyn's efforts.
Okay. So does the Senate look like it's going to take up some action here pretty soon?
Well, you just never know till it happens, but at least we have one senator that's interested. We've spoken to Senator Joseph Lieberman in Hartford, Connecticut, and he arranged for us to send summaries to 3 oversight committees. And we're looking forward to hearing back from them by the end of this month. We were told by a staff member of Senator Lieberman that we probably wouldn't hear anything until the first week in September.
Okay. Now, what are, I guess it's in the early stages. What are they proposing to do anything, or are you proposing for them to do something, or?
Well, we're proposing that both the Senate and the House Judiciary Committee investigate the whole matter, look into whether or not judges are improperly influenced, look into whether or not certain people are denied the 86 federal rules of civil litigation, which we believe they are, and we're asking for reform. We're asking that the federal government help in situations like this, because we don't believe that it only happens in the Fourth Circuit. We believe things like this happen that go unnoticed all over the country.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. They do, for sure. They happen here in the state of Iowa, which is why I've headed the organization called VJO, Vote Iowa Judges Out. But unfortunately, we cannot vote out federal judges, can we?
I don't know. Can you there? I think some federal judges run for office, but not many.
From what I recall, I think they're appointed for life for good behavior. Though that term "good behavior" is not interpreted like it should be.
Certainly not enforced, is it?
It's definitely not enforced because there's not been too many people. I can't think of any judge that's ever been removed. Can you?
I'm sure it's
Federal
happened,
judge?
and I read about it every now and then, but I can't figure one time that it did. And I know there's been a lot of complaints, and the judges stick together. They protect each other.
Yeah, that's one of the problems here. So what kind of reforms do you think would be? I mean, how could we better assess a judge's conduct in his?
There should be oversight of federal judges, not by other federal judges that they're going to protect them, but there should be some type of legislative setup that really works. That not just a oversight committee that is difficult to even present anything to, but what we need are laws with teeth that will work, that are run by legislators, where a judge cannot do whatever he wants. Or Senator Cornyn says they're really not high priests, even though they expect that they are. They consider themselves high priests.
Yeah, I noticed I had the occasion to go to a Iowa Supreme Court oral argument a couple months back, and well, they kind of seem like they are pretending to be high priests. They walk in there with the ceremony, hear ye, and they parade around while everybody's standing, and then they all sit in unison. You know, enough with all the charades. I say, show me your work. You know, I originally come from Missouri, and you know, the saying down there is it's the show me state. So they're going to have to show me they're worthy of that such praise as that. Until I see it, I don't think it's deserving that they should parade around like that and hear ye, and all this stuff, and these black robes on, and you know, they're not doing their job. But back to what you're saying, I recall in one article about a year ago, I specifically remember reading that there were about 755 federal complaints or complaints against federal judges in 2003, and there was only one that resulted in a penalty, which was a private reprimand. And I believe that was even the details of that reprimand was even kept under wraps. What's your thoughts on the oversight that's taking place right now with the federal judges?
Our experience is that although there's committees set up, it starts with bar associations, it starts with grievance committees, and nothing really ever happens, even when it gets to the oversight committee. And then there's limits. For example, there's an oversight committee at the Department of Justice, but that would only cover employees of the Department of Justice. It should cover everyone that participates in the justice system. For example, if you wanted to complain about someone to the Inspector General of the justice system, the only person you can complain about was maybe a trustee of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. You can't complain about a judge because he's not an employee. You can't complain about a lawyer that takes advantage of regulations and warps them and aborts them because he's not an employee. So authority has got to reach out to run the justice system the way Congress meant it to be when they wrote the 86 Rules of Civil Litigation.
Yeah, and I believe there's been a lot of discussion. I know I participated in an online discussion group with you for some time now. And I recall one of the leaders of this one discussion group, Jacob Brzezinski, talking about a group of filings that he had examined in one particular federal district court, and how basically all the pro se litigants had their cases essentially dismissed, and they never got to the stage of a trial or anything like that. Everything was basically dismissed on some sort of procedural error basis. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. I call it judicial inertia. The judiciary does nothing if you're pro se because they're afraid of making a mistake. So if they ignore and dismiss, they don't make a mistake. They do nothing. To give you an example, on page 12 of the Citizens Foundation's expose, I'll read it. It's a footnote. It says Melvin Hirschman is bar counsel at the Attorney Grievance Commission of Maryland. During a recent 5-year period, the commission reviewed 9,561 complaints and only determined that 103, that's 1.077%, should be sanctioned.
Wow. And what were the penalties in those cases?
I have no idea what the penalties were.
Yeah. Well,
It could have been a minor fine. It could be a short period of time that they couldn't practice before a certain court. Certainly nothing serious.
Yeah.
It's not as serious as Rayfield Palmero having to sit still for 10 games.
Yeah, they tend to want to shed the light on other areas, and the real fault with the justice, I think, depends largely on part of the judiciary. But I applaud you for doing that work, and I definitely wish you success because it does affect all of us. Certainly, the federal judiciary gets their act together. They'll be more apt to check some of the violations of rights that go on in the state courts. But did you have any other comments you'd like to make, Morton?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
On page 13, called Misuse of Legal Procedures, in the third paragraph, well, firstly, it refers to the 75th Congress of the United States approving the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. There are 86 rules, and they took effect on September the 1st, 1938. The most important one is number 1. These rules govern the procedure in the United States District Courts in all suits of a civil nature, whether cognizable of cases at law or in equity or in admiralty, with the exception stated in Rule 81, which wouldn't affect the kinds of things we've been involved in. They will be construed and administered to secure, and this is what does not happen, the just, speedy, and inexpensive determination of every action.
Yeah. That's terrible.
Well, one of our founders has a case that has been ignored. The judge won't move for over 600 days.
They ignored the
Mainly
what
the
for
judge's
600
own
days?
refusal.
He ignored the what for 600 days?
A motion for him to recuse himself.
So that's for almost 2 years that the motion was sitting there in limbo.
We have worse examples than that. We have a case where the judge had a hearing, and it took him 800 and some days to come up with a fictional set of findings that just never existed.
Yeah, that's been my experience in the federal court, and that's right here in the Southern District of Iowa. There was a case that I actually filed several years back, and it took about 4 years for them to decide the case, and the research and the briefs were all there. It's just that they didn't really want to do anything.
That's the inertia.
Yeah, and they have this other concept that they call comity. I say it's comedy, but it's COMITY, where they try to defer to the state courts on almost all matters, even though the state got it wrong. You know, and it just happens so much. But you know, I think that the more that we have individuals like you putting in the good work and suggestions to our legislatures, because they do have the power to act, I think that we're going to eventually overcome, you know. But did you have any other comments, Morton?
Yeah, we've been ignored by 19 senators and 19 congressmen.
Really? Any from Iowa?
No.
Okay, I was going to say we're in Iowa. What about Nebraska?
Just a second. Let me turn to that page. A lot of names here that have ignored this. You want congressmen or senators?
Either one.
Okay. Just going down the list. Here's some names you might know.
Okay.
Senator Dennis is retired. He denied us. Robert Dole, who ran for president, just ignored us. Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, ignored us. Bill Graham, that we've all heard of from Texas,
Yep.
ignored us. Chuck Grassley from Iowa ignored us.
Chuck Grassley ignored you?
Yep.
On the issue of judicial reform?
Yes.
Well, see, there you have it, folks. Not only should we be voting out some judges, but we should also be voting out some congressmen that are not
Or in this case,
Respect.
senior senator.
senior citizen.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Senator Arlen Specter from Pennsylvania has
Okay.
ignored us. Senator Strom Thurmond ignored us before he died. And congressmen, and the congresswoman from Maryland, Helen Bentley, just ignored us. John Conyers of Michigan ignored us. Barney Franks of Massachusetts ignored us. Just looking down the list. Here's one that really hurts. Nancy Pelosi of California ignored us. She happens to be the sister of Tommy Dale Sandro Jr. in Baltimore. He was mayor following his father. His father was mayor, I think, for 4 terms. Then he went to Congress. And I served in 1964 as the head of the of an important economic committee in Baltimore. And I knew Nancy Pelosi. My father grew up with her father in Little Italy, and yet she ignores us.
And she voted against it, huh? Or she just chose to
she
ignore
just
you?
would never answer our letters. Lamar Smith of Texas ignored us. James Sensenbrenner, that now heads the House Judiciary Committee, ignored us. But when I took my first company public, I was turned down by 55 underwriters. And finally one said yes. And we had our public offering. We built a $1 billion company.
Wow.
So you have to keep asking.
Yeah, well, you definitely have the determination to get something going.
That's right. You just got to keep asking, and eventually you find someone that'll pay attention.
I'm curious as to what Chuck Grassley did or didn't do. I mean, did you send him a bunch of letters and he never responded?
That's correct.
Wow. That's our taxpayers at waste,
That's right.
ladies and gentlemen. So, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, and the one that really shocked me is Sensenbrenner, because he's been talking a lot about the judiciary lately, and he didn't do anything. He just ignored you.
Yeah, he didn't even answer our letters. Didn't answer our phone calls.
Tom Harkin.
What about Tom Harkin?
We didn't contact him. But
Okay.
Senator Charles Schumer, that you hear so much about from New York, he ignored us.
Wow. Well, I think it'll come back to haunt him
I hope it will.
as this becomes more and more of a pressing issue. Because, you know, I feel that whenever your life, your property, your children are at stake, and you have a courthouse that is not in the best array, you know, because of the lack of checks and balances on the officials that's handling the matter, I think that it's a very serious matter, and the congressmen should be paying a lot of attention. And one thing that we really haven't touched upon on this show is the fact that a lot of these legislators have the authority to check these judges and limit their power, but they choose to look the other way and ignore the letters. And here we have a prime example right here. 19 congressmen that chose not to even respond. You know, I think it's high time that we need to bring this to their attention and start voting them out of office as well. What do you think some of the reason is behind the fact that they do not respond to these kind of requests, Martin?
Because they don't want to get involved with rabble-rousers such as you and I that want to stand up and say what's wrong with the system. They don't want to see the system changed. They're afraid that they might lose votes if they stand up with a minority that wants a change. I'll give you one example that I'm really annoyed with. Senator Edward Kennedy, Massachusetts. I have a cousin who's married a doctor in Massachusetts. She worked on Jack Kennedy's campaign. She worked on Ted Kennedy's campaign. I volunteered for the Special Olympics and had many interesting dinners at Eunice and Sergeant Shriver's home. When she went down with cancer, I sent her the whole regimen that I used to overcome the disease. And then I went to her brother, Ted Kennedy, and say, I'm the guy that helped your sister. He just ignored me.
Wow.
Maybe he doesn't like his sister. I don't know.
Yeah, it must not. Well, hey, we're running short on time here, Martin. Did you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Pardon?
I said we're running short on time here. Did you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
No, let's just all push forward and keep ringing the senators and congressmen's phones and keep writing them letters, and eventually we'll be heard.
That's a good thought.
Did you let him know that we have a judge here that doesn't believe in the First Amendment?
Yeah, I think we were discussing that last week. You've got my letter on the incident that happened here with the FIJA members, Fully Informed Jury Associations, being accosted outside the makeshift courthouse in Adel, Iowa. You got that last week, didn't you, Martin?
Yes, I did, and that's not a shock. I think most judges don't believe in the First Amendment.
Yeah,
They don't want to be second-guessed.
But they're sworn to it.
And, you know, I think the idiocracy behind the whole thing is that here you have journalists who are supposed to be digging for the truth. They seem sympathetic to what the judge was saying because of their questioning. Well, don't you think that's really tainting the jury? You know,
I think
it's one of the
very often
questions that I heard on the audio tape or the videotape that John Harvey here shot. One of the media representatives asked the member of FIJA, "Well, don't you think that's tainting the jury?"
Yeah.
And I really don't understand that question, because they could read for themselves that it didn't say anything about this particular case they were involved in. Mm-hmm. You know, I really don't understand that. But you're familiar with FIJA, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. Anything objectionable you find about that organization?
No,
Okay.
not really.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it to object.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that is controversial about them, I think, is the whole idea that of jury nullification. But there's jury nullification that takes place all the time. So I mean, they just openly discuss it,
And they try to guide the jury to come up with a decision that they've already made before the case begins.
Right.
yeah, exactly. Well, hey, I think that's all the time we have. Did you have any other questions, John or Don?
No, not
Okay.
not from here.
All right. Hey, well, thanks for appearing on our show again, Morton.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, we'll look forward to having you on again here soon. I'm hoping.
Wonderful.
Okay, buddy.
Bye.
You take care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
All right. That was an interesting conversation we had there, wasn't it? About the I didn't know
Yeah.
that they had so many congressmen out there that didn't respond to these sort of things. That's something else we should be looking into as voters.
Can you summarize in a sentence or two what he was telling us?
Yeah, basically, we just got to keep pressing these legislators to do something to make the judges accountable. They have to have some sort of independent oversight.
Okay.
Federal judiciary, they have lifelong appointments until good behavior or retirement.
Okay.
And there have been very, very few. I think there's only been like one or two that's ever been impeached.
Right.
Or it's been very, very small percentage that have actually ever been removed. And I don't even think the commission has, taken serious steps to even remove a federal judge. It's I think the last time impeachment was held was in back 83 or 82.
Right.
Long time ago. So I mean, are we saying that all these judges are on their good behavior? I really don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
there is a lot of craziness going on in the judiciary, especially when you can examine a court file in a courthouse and see that a particular type of a party, like a pro se litigant, is 100% of the time has their case dismissed, not even given the benefit of the doubt and given an evidentiary hearing or anything like that.
You bet.
I would guess to know whether the judge is on their good behavior depends on which side of the fence you're on. We don't
Yeah.
agree, but I imagine there's a few people out there that do think they're on their good behavior.
Well, I think that they're lulled into this sense of might makes right. This guy
Right.
is here in power, so he must be right.
Yep.
And I think that's what the dynamic that we saw on the video clip that you had from the Adel courthouse that you showed last week, John, was that a lot of these journalists, they didn't even question the FIJA members as to what do you think the judge did wrong. Their questions were more along the lines of, well, don't you think that's tainting the jury?
Well, first of all, there was no jury there. Those were
The jury was
citizen
not even
selected.
impaneled.
Yeah.
So the judge was clearly out of bounds. And if someone would have raised a objection to that, then it wouldn't have made any merit in court because, for the most part, the jury, like I said, the jury was not even impaneled. Your constitutional rights in a lot of these trial cases do not even take place until the jury is impaneled. They're not even affected.
That's right.
Except for your right to remain silent. But so-
Terrance, I was going to bring some feathers to the show because there's going to
Don't
be
forget the tar.
no, there's going to be a prosecutor is going to be sticking a feather in her cap for nailing this so-called defendant, and there's going to be a judge who's going to be putting a feather in his cap, for arranging for a plea bargain, so he can save the taxpayers loads and loads of money.
So you're saying
so-
it didn't go to trial, John?
No.
Talking about the Pierce
Yeah,
case?
right. Yeah, so there's going to be lots of feathers passed out here. Everybody's going to take credit for doing a super job on this. And who is the loser in the case? The public. The public isn't going to know what went on in the negotiations on the plea bargain. The public isn't going to know the facts of the case. The public isn't going to know who it was that was doing the complaining, but yet the public will have to pick up the tab for the whole case. And it'll be interesting to see what holds as far as the sentence is concerned. But this is a very strange case, and it's going to have a lot of commentary to it, I suppose, before we're all done. But you see, the jury, even though there were people out there who were said to be poisoning the jury didn't even get to do its thing. The jury didn't get to do anything like consider the facts of the case. You see, the courtroom is a place where you should be able to discern what the facts of the case are. In this case, we'll have no facts disclosed. We'll have simply the plea bargain. Okay.
Did the judge put out an order against Fija after his threat to him?
I don't understand what the question is. Did he put out an
My
order?
understanding in that tape we saw that the judge came out and said he was thinking about putting an order out against Fija.
Well, I mean, he did do an oral order. He ordered them to basically, in a way, I interpret it as stopping.
Yeah. He said he was going to issue an order. I couldn't find it on the free section of the Iowa courts online, but yes, I would like to get a copy of the actual order, because I think this judge was clearly out of bounds. And while it's good to see that the thing was cleaned up without having to go through weeks of hearings and so forth, I still think there's a lot of things that are going to be undisclosed to the people who have to pick up the tab. What do you think, Terrance?
Well, I think that it was just a terrible situation. Some of the things that made me a little concerned about the proper implementation of justice in the case was the withholding of the arrest report that was supposedly referred to by the other arrest reports. And then the prosecutor says, oh, well, we didn't know it was there. Well, that's something that we often see in a lot of these cases, is that they sit there and they say, well, we didn't know it was there. Somebody knew it was there if it was referred to by other documents.
Right.
It's got to
Would that be called a lie?
Well, they call it, sometimes they call it a truth. It's just depending on who's telling it.
Okay.
But, you know.
I even hear the Attorney General, the one we paid tax money to, say things like that.
Yeah, and then the other funny thing, or other crazy thing that was said during the trial, or right before the trial, there was a comment that was supposedly have been made to Alfredo Parrish from the prosecutor, to the effect that, didn't one of your relatives just get arrested? And he reportedly, and this was in the Des Moines Register last Sunday, which was the 21st, I believe, he reportedly said back to her, what are you talking about? Get out of my way. Or get out of my face, or something to that effect. So, you know, I don't understand why someone who is supposed to be held in such esteem in an office such as a prosecutor or Attorney General's office is taking shots like that. And, you know, I really don't understand. But at least it came to a head. But, you know, the thing I think we should all take out of this is that justice is dead in the mind of Judge Holst.
Right.
Because he definitely has no pulse.
No,
so that's
no
why I
pulse
say
Holst.
we should call him No Post Holst.
You bet.
And He should be voted out, I think, in the minds of people that are wanting justice to be alive. Because you shouldn't run your courthouse, or the schoolhouse, I should say in this case, with the idea in mind to keep everybody in the dark. Because this is an open and free society. Facts should be openly presented to people. He has no power or no authority to go outside the courthouse, or outside the schoolhouse in this case, where the trial was going to be held, and go and say, you guys can't hand out leaflets because you might taint my future jury.
That's right.
You know, and then to go on and say that someone poisoned his jury.
Yep.
He's really ridiculous.
That's right. Well, Don has a story that he saw on the internet, and I asked him if he would bring that story down and disclose it on this program. There's one other thing. I'm hoping we'll have time toward the end of the program to talk a little bit about. This would be like a post-mortem because we don't get to see what's happening inside of a termination of parental rights very often. They don't let people in those secret hearings. But a young lady from Fort Dodge lost her 4-year-old daughter to the system. She is one of many, many individuals who have lost their children to the system. It is a money-making scheme. And I thought that if we have time on this program, I'd like to go through the actual court hearing, or the opinion of the Court of Appeals, and see if there's anything in there that looks like they actually used some common sense, or did they just hem-haw around the thing, believing all of the rhetoric that we get from the social workers. However, for right now, let's turn now to Don Burgmaier, who has a story along the same line. Don Burgmaier.
On August 17th, a case was filed in the interest of ZL.
No, this is the nightmare case I thought you were going to look at.
Oh, you were referring to a
Right.
woman terminated, so I went to the wrong
Right,
paper.
right.
There's a lot of information on DHS. So you're referring to the one that an email came to me from another source, and he stated, the state receives federal dollars for every child they can confiscate into their program. And then he goes on, and it's a quote, information that comes out of Michigan. There's a children's rights program or group up there that's fighting the cause for families that are losing their children in Michigan. The article goes on, approximately 26,000 children per state every year get taken. Now keep in mind, DHS builds up their statistics, so I don't believe actually that there's that many children taken, but DHS builds their statistics up to make them look good in the federal eyes, I believe. Anyway, he goes on. The nightmare called Child Protection Services, that's short for CPS. It's unlicensed bureaucrats deny children their parents. Deny children their parents? Are we living in the United States where children don't have rights to their parents? And these are based on anonymous complaints. That was stated by Terry Wanston. Imagine for a moment that you are outside playing with your children and one of them disturbs one of your neighbors. A shouting match ensued, even though you have tried several times to apologize and had your child apologize. Now, a couple days later, a CPS worker shows up with a report of suspected abuse by an anonymous tip. They can never tell you who made the report because that's illegal. There's laws against that. You can't find out unless the judge orders it, unless he's curious. So having nothing to hide, that's the parents, you. If you get a knock at the door, you have nothing to hide. You let them in to see that your children are fine. You don't think that the bruise on your son's leg from falling off his bike last week will matter. You don't think that because the kids have been out back playing in the dirt will matter. Or maybe you haven't started the laundry or washed the dishes yet today will matter to the social worker. The worker leaves and says, you will hear from them if it is unfounded. I'm sure you'll hear from them if it's founded too. Or at least you'll wonder where your children went to when after the DHS snatches them. He goes on. They won't tell you that your adorable children fit the profile of kids that are the perfect foster parents are looking for. In other words, your children are worth something here. You should be proud of that. No, not really. So after a couple days, the worker comes back with the police and takes your child or children. It happens every day in this country. It happens many times a day. If you get right down to it, a family here, a family there, many, many families. You have no rights in their eyes. No warrant is needed to take your children. Now what? In a couple days, they let you see the children if you are lucky. Your daughter's or son's hair may have been cut. They may have been examined by a doctor and or psychiatrist. The worker, a different one, now tells you that your children are saying that you abused them. Then you go to a hearing where the worker explains to the judge or referee that you did this or some other form of abuse. Now you get appointed a lawyer. He's called court appointed. That you have never spoken to before. The lawyer says, plead no contest so you can get them back quicker. It happens every day in Genesee County. It's happening every day in Polk County here too. Then you get no say in court. Not a peep will they listen to. Just your court-appointed attorney. But they won't listen to you. The worker just stands up there spewing unbelievable lies, and you can do nothing. Then a month later, you have to sign a contract with about 8 things on it that you have to do in order to get your children back. Don't sign contracts. That's Don's opinion. If you refuse to sign, which is the same thing as refusing services, which they will use against you in court. I tell you, don't say nothing, don't sign, just stand firm. Because when you talk, when you sign papers, it all goes against you. He goes on. Now you get a visit once a week with your children for 2 hours. Every 3 months you go to a review hearing where you again don't get to speak. They continue to lie about you and say you are non-compliant. After 15 months, if the contract is not fulfilled, they start termination proceedings. If they terminate your rights, all future children are taken when 1 day old, and you can't stop them. In other words, you have your rights terminated, and life goes on. You have another baby, it belongs to the state. And as soon as that baby is born, that social worker's there and snatches that baby, and out the door it goes. You may never see it again. So, from the very first accusation, 2 years before, 3 years before, and you didn't speak up and defend yourself, you just let your court-appointed attorney do it, now the nightmare just continues on year after year. The whole time that this is going on, your court-appointed attorney sits there. And of course, he's raking in a little money. He's getting paid. That's why he sits there. Your 4th and 14th Amendment rights have been stomped on, and no one cares. Your family is torn apart, and no one believes you are innocent of wrongdoing. Your own family won't even believe you. Now what? You contemplate stealing your children back. You plan revenge. You go crazy or commit suicide. It happens all the time in this country. Of course, DHS is not putting out in the news media who they just killed yesterday. Or when a person goes crazy and shoots a social worker, we don't hear too much about that. But you know where that person goes to? Trying to defend their family. They'll go to prison. So I encourage you, don't go shooting a social worker. Your own family won't even believe you. That's true. So many times, parents don't have the backing of their family. Now what? You contemplate stealing your children back. You plan revenge. Just don't go in that direction. That's my recommendation. No matter how bad it seems, contact people like me and John and others that are in the battle here to help you. The foster parents get subsidies for having your children in their home. Then when they adopt, the government pays all their fees. Plus the government pays the state between $4,000 to $6,000 for every child adopted out of foster care. Your children are worth a lot of money. They continue to pay the adoptive parents until each child turns 18. How do you feel now? The media is allowed to sit in on every case of child abuse in this state. They only report the sensational ones where a child is injured or killed. Why is that? With media coverage, the fraud and lies would be stopped. The contradicted doctors...
Contracted.
Yeah, it could be contracted. In other words, the DHS pays them to testify in court against you. The psychiatrists and doctors would be exposed and the laws may get changed. So this is all cover-up. It doesn't really get out in the public. So I'm asking that you cover the story of Emily Lake and her mother, a Michigan mother, and 9-year-old little girl, pepper sprayed twice by the police in Portland, Oregon. How would you like the police to come to your door and spray pepper face in you and your daughter's face? The mother is still not facing any charges. They haven't accused her of anything, but she doesn't have her daughter either. Can you sleep at night not doing anything? Please help us. Start covering these cases and help us expose the corruption. Most DHS, CPS, HHS, or DCFS, that's all letters for the DHS here in Iowa or other states. Most of these workers aren't even licensed. So what gives them power to do all this? A law they overlook. How can everyone with no license decide who is or who isn't a good parent? And a lot of them aren't even parents themselves, so how would they know? Thank you for reading this and doing something to help. Signed, Terry Wenstrom. He's from Michigan Foundation for Children's Rights, or she is, or let's see, Terry must be his that's a woman up there in Michigan fighting the cause. All right, John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, we said we wanted to look into, I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to do the autopsy the way I wanted to, because I wanted to, for all three of us to take a look at this. This is a story about a little 4-year-old girl. They use their initials so they don't give out their entire name. I don't know what the L stands for. The Z stands for Zoe. I don't know why that is undisclosable because it's written up in the opinion that her name is Zoe. But at any rate, she's identified as ZL. Shelley is the mother of Zoe, who was born on October 2001. Zoe was born with meth in her system. Um, the mother was one of the users of meth. I think it's rather the scourge of the country, but sometimes we run into these problems. Zoe was temporarily removed from Shelley's care. Shelley began substance abuse treatment program later that month, and the juvenile court proceedings were subsequently dismissed due to Shelley's voluntary participation in services. See, if you cooperate with them, you get your kids back. In May 2003, Shelley contacted the Iowa Department of Human Services, and doing this, I hope that you interrupt me and say, somebody is just dreaming here. Someone's using subjective thinking. They're not using what they found in the record, because I think that a lot of these, if we examined a lot of these opinions, they have nothing to do with substantive evidence. They have something to do with stuff that was presented to them by the social worker. And the social worker doesn't even have to think in order to write a glaring, nasty report against someone. And certainly those reports are difficult because they're like the manure spreader approach that I tell you about once in a while. You may be able to walk past a manure spreader and miss most of the missiles, but there are some that are going to hit and they're going to stick and they're going to stink. And that's what it is when you face DHS. They can throw all kinds of missiles at you that are not good and not easy to refute. Well, looks like we're going to go short on time here, but Zoe was returned to Shelley's care in June 2003 when Shelley found housing. In other words, this was a case where people think that foster care is just a high-class babysitting service, and so she put her in foster care because she was temporarily homeless. This was a very short time, and it probably should not have been done.
Well, some parents get desperate, and
Right.
they see the state out there as help, and they don't have any other choice. They don't feel anyway.
Right. Concerns arose that Shelley might again be using illegal drugs. You see, the word concerns, tell me what part of concerns is substantial evidence. Concerns? What was it that caused the concern? There might be substantial evidence that raised the concern. Why don't you tell us that in your opinion? Don't just tell us the subjective conclusion. On July 15, 2003, a combined adjudication and dispositional hearing was held. Zoe was determined to be a child in need of assistance. That's called a China petition. Pursuant to Iowa Code Section 232.2, subsection 6, subsection C, subsection 2, 2003 edition of the Iowa Code. The child is likely to suffer harm due to the parent's failure to supervise. I don't know what the failure to supervise was because it doesn't tell in here. The court ordered Shelley to abstain from mood-altering substances, to complete a substance abuse evaluation, and to participate in random drug tests and follow through with recommended mental health treatment. Shelley has had a drug test in January 2004, which was positive for meth, and also a hair test for Zoe showed the presence of illegal drugs. Zoe was removed from Shelley's care and placed in foster care. Shelley continued to use illegal drugs and did not cooperate with services. At hearing in September 2004, Shelley agreed to participate in a program such as a House of Mercy, where she could have Zoe placed with her, which the juvenile court noted was probably the best and last hope for the mother to regain custody. Shelley later changed her mind and stated she would develop her own plan. Now, what's wrong with that?
Because it's not a DHS plan, that's what's wrong with it.
Yeah, right. It wasn't of their making, so why should they cooperate? In March 2005, the
It
state
sounded like she had her mother's assistance too, but that's no good. DHS don't want family members involved.
because they won't think the same way that DHS thinks. In March 2005, the state filed a petition seeking to terminate Shelley's parental rights, and the juvenile court terminated Shelley's rights pursuant to 232 and a whole bunch of other numbers with subsections, and removed the child removed for 6 months. Let's see. Child removed for 6 months. Parent was not maintained has not maintained significant and meaningful contact. How in the world can they expect you to keep meaningful contact when you don't when you're not with your child? The parent has a substance abuse problem. Yeah, a lot of people have substance abuse problem, but it doesn't rise to the level that you remove the children, or you deprive the child of her mother. Child cannot be removed within a reasonable, or cannot be returned within a reasonable time. And the court found, here's the findings. Since the permanency hearing, the mother has continued to provide positive drug screens and has failed to consistently and meaningfully participate in any recommended counseling, treatment, or services. By the way, these services were not court-ordered, so she didn't have to, but because the DHS ordered them, she figured it was optional. And the court should order these services if they're to be mandatory.
This is all negative against the parent.
Sure it is. She is still unemployed. Well, if a person is unemployed, you should take their kids, right? She is still essentially homeless since she is just living with her mother. Oh, if you live with your mother, you should have your kids taken away from you.
Yeah, since you're living with your mother, you're homeless.
You bet.
What?
That's what it says. You can see the official document. Here's what the official document is. In the Iowa Court of Appeals, all this stuff that I was reading from is from this document of venerable judges, people who are supposed to know justice and are supposed to temper that with a degree of prudence and common sense and
So
background.
she lost in the Supreme Court.
She lost in the Iowa Court of Appeals.
By Judge Hootink.
Hootink,
And if it's by Judge Hootink, then the opinion must stink.
That's right. Okay, so that gives you some kind of a clue as to what is happening in termination of parental rights in Iowa. I am opposed to the way it is run. We'll see you next week. Thank you for stopping.